conversation I want to have with you is the same conversation I've had with parents in Atlanta last week, in Winston-Salem, North Carolina the week before that, and St. Louis the week before that. But the conversation is really just three questions to help frame what we're going to be doing for children and young people for the next generation at the Children's Defense Fund. Freedom Schools as likely the deepest work that we do across the country. Today, there were Freedom Schools at 172 sites across this country, serving 11,000 scholars, including your own, in 29 states across the United States. But we just started doing this in 1992. Freedom Schools are the second generation transformation of the Children's Defense Fund. The first generation was around public policy. Getting things into law that advance the well-being, that end child poverty, that stop abuse and neglect of children across the country. That's the second piece of what we do. The third piece of what we do is what I talk about as power building. And the power building work we do is very targeted with certain constituencies because we understand that public policy only happens in an environment of accountability. And so power building for us focuses on the communities that are wrapped around Freedom Schools. So I told the group earlier today, our dear sister Christelle was in the room, that the three zones of our work, program, Freedom Schools, policy, public policy in the State House here in DC and other places, and power building all need to wrap around one another. But what they wrap around is Freedom Schools. And Freedom Schools, as you know, wrap around your scholars. And so when I tell people all the time, my staff is tired of hearing me say it, but this today is the absolute expression of it. I say there should be nothing on the public policy agenda of the Children's Defense Fund that does not begin as a problem in the life of mamas, big mamas, and abuelitas who are raising our scholars in Freedom Schools. So when you said, I'm Christine, I'm here, my grandbabies, I said, yep, this is where our public policy agenda starts. So let's see if we have a bold person to share why family economic mobility he's excited about. Yes.
Well, actually, education is the foundation for everything. My great-grandparents raised my grandparents to do better than them. My grandparents raised my parents to do better than them. My parents raised me. I was the first of my family to go to college with my family. And we're doing the same thing with our son. We want him to do better than us. So education is really the foundation. Without that, you can't have anything else.
Thank you. Tell me your name.
Bernard.
Thank you, Bernard. I really appreciate this. One of the things that I tell people a lot, part of what sent me forth into this work, I can literally connect the dots from this moment to me meeting this gentleman to me being right here, was the death of Michael Brown in Ferguson. And one of the things I tell people about what happened that day that people don't understand what happened that day is that Michael Brown died on the dividing line between an accredited school district and a non-accredited school district. He had just graduated and he was headed off to college. People didn't see that. He was stopped by police for walking in the street in a place where there was no sidewalks. People didn't see that. And the people who gathered around to mourn him were young people, educated young people who represented the most educated generation in American history, who grew up in the context of a cascading number of fissures, fractures, and disruptions that meant that even though they were more educated than their parents, because they grew up in the context of a recession and the response to a recession and global flattening where people are not being paid appropriate wages, they are more educated, but they will not do as well as their parents. This critical element of social mobility that is built into the idea of the American dream had broken down for the people who were mourning Michael Brown. And they decided that they were going to stay outside until somebody gave them some answers. That's what happened. And this promise that you've been able to pass on from generation to generation, and the promise thereof, is absolutely teetering right now. So we talked to a certain leaders today about democracy, because that idea is tied up with this idea of the ability to advance. If I do what, right? It's not just get an education, defer gratification, save your money, go to school. You do all these things, you should be able to do better. Yet, I have 3 boys. 3 black boys. 3 brilliant, beautiful black boys who are the guards for my remarkable little princess. And it is more likely, even though they have the most significant indicator of child well-being in America. You know what that is? Most significant indicator of child well-being in America is the level of educational attainment of the mother. My wife is a doctor. They have this critical indicator of well-being. They're growing up in a middle-class family, socially connected, volunteering in church, engaging in community, coming to freedom school, and it is more likely in America that my 3 black boys who are growing up middle class, it is more likely that they will be poor in their lives than it is that they will remain middle class. The concept of social mobility has broken down. We've never really experienced democracy in America. And I quoted a mentor of mine who's a pastor, my name is Jeremiah Wright, and he said that if you ever bake the cake and you realize after you bake the cake and you cut it, you took a bite and you realize you left out sugar, then there's not enough sugar you can sprinkle on the outside to make up for the fact that you didn't put it in the batter in the first place. So if you tried to bake a cake of democracy and you left out black and brown people, and you built it on indigenous people, and you left out their voices, and you left out women, you can't sprinkle enough sugar on the outside of that to make it right, because we've never seen it. So maybe you just need to throw the cake away and bake it again from the beginning. We've been testing that idea with folks who are willing to start from the beginning and say that with this generation of your scholars, we actually need to raise democracy for the first time, to make it inclusive, to make it participatory, because representative democracy doesn't work when the only representatives, when the primary representatives are straight in public white men with resources. That doesn't work when your country, 74 million children, are predominantly black and brown.